Welcome to a new series of videos I'm calling Avatars. In this series, I hope to explain all the ins and outs of custom avatars for things like VRChat, VC Face, and in today's video, Beatsaber. I'll be sectioning off various parts of the video, so feel free to skip around and find what is important to you. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is head over to the link in the description and download modassistant.exe. Once you have modassistant.exe downloaded, you can launch it. You'll be greeted by this intro screen, which will give you some information about the mods, and all you're going to have to do is hit I agree, and then head over to the mods tab. It'll take a while to load in all the mods, and you'll get a long list of mods like this. The two essential ones for today's tutorial are Camera 2 and Custom Avatars. So just make sure that those two ones are checked, and also, if you want to install some of these other ones, feel free to go ahead and do that as well. Then, once you've selected everything that you want, just hit install or update, and everything will be installed. Now that you've installed those mods, those will be available inside of Beatsaber. So now you're going to want to head to the second link in the description for Beatsaber Custom Avatars, and you'll be redirected to this other releases page. So right now, as of the making of this video, we're currently on version 5.2.9. The terms and conditions for Mod Assistant also state that mods can sometimes break, so that means you may need to update your avatar in the future and or update even just the mods themselves in Mod Assistant. So keep that in mind if things ever break. But for the purposes of this video, we'll just go through setting it up with version 5.2.9. Of course, the process should be relatively similar for future versions. So, you're going to want to download this zip folder. This is Beatsaber Custom Avatars, and then the version number, and then unityproject.zip. So once you have that downloaded, and you can see I already have it downloaded, you're going to want to click on Read More or whatnot, and you're going to want to check in here for this editor space. And so basically, you'll see that they are using Unity version 2019.3.15.f1. So that is the version of Unity that you're going to need in order to be able to work with Beatsaber Custom Avatars for this version. This also means, of course, that you have to have Unity installed, so make sure that you download and install Unity Hub. And also, in order to install the correct version of Unity, you can head to the download archive, and once again, all of these will be linked in the description, and you can find the exact version number here. So in this case, we're looking for Unity version 2019.3.15. So just head to the Unity 2019.x tab right here and scroll down until you find the proper release. So that's this one right here. Then you can just click on download and install using Unity Hub and press this thing. And so if you have Unity Hub installed, it will just install this version of Unity for you. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to unzip the folder that you downloaded for Beatsaber Custom Avatars, and you're going to want to open Unity Hub and press Add. So now just navigate to the directory that you stored that folder in. So in this case, in Beatsaber tutorial, I'll click in here, and basically you want to make sure that you're in this folder that has assets, packages, and project settings, and click Select Folder. You'll see that it opens here. If you have multiple versions of Unity installed, you're going to want to make sure that you're selecting the correct version when you open this project. So in this case, we're opening it using Unity version 2019.3.15f1. So you can just click on that, and it should open the project for you. And it might take some time, but eventually we'll end up in the main scene. All right, as you see, we are now in Unity. And you can already see that there is an error at the bottom. So if you move over to the console, you'll see that there are some errors here. Don't worry too much about these. We're going to actually cover how to get rid of those errors and how to actually get everything ready to actually work with the avatar right now. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to head back into Mod Assistant and then switch over to the Options tab. You'll see that there is something here labeled Install Folder. You're going to want to open that folder. This is where Beatsaber is installed on your system. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to head into Beatsaber_data and then into Managed. And right now we only care about this dynamic bone file and this final K file. So what you're going to do is you're going to select both of them, and you're going to want to go back to the folder for your Unity project that you opened earlier, basically the thing that you unzipped, and here it is. So now you're going to want to head into the assets folder, and you're going to want to head into the libraries folder, and you're just going to want to paste those files in here. So Unity is actually going to automatically import those files now that it's in that folder. So head over to the console and clear this so you don't have those errors sitting around, and then go into Projects, Libraries, and you'll see Project Assets Libraries, and you'll see this custom avatar.dll. So you're going to actually want to re-import that file, and now that you've re-imported it, you'll actually see that there are no errors here. It doesn't say that there was an error, and so that means that everything is working as it should. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to download the Unity package for your avatar, and or import the FBX for your avatar with all the shaders and whatnot, or basically anything that you need to do to get your avatar in the scene. And so in this case, we just have a Unity package. So you're going to want to double click that, and it's going to load for a bit, and you'll come up with this import Unity package thing right here. And so essentially you're going to want to make sure that if you have all these shaders and stuff, shaders importing is fine. You should actually be doing that. But you want to make sure that you don't import anything with dynamic bones. You shouldn't be importing anything with dynamic bones for this, because we're going to be using the dynamic bones script that is provided by Beatsaber. So you're just going to click the import button, and it should continue doing that. It is also worth noting that for this tutorial, you don't have to import any actual shaders like Poyomi or whatnot, since we'll be using the shaders that we need to use in order for it to appear properly inside Beatsaber. Anyways, if you already have a pre-optimized Unity package that I shared in a server or something along those lines for an avatar, that means you can skip the next couple sections and go to the timestamp indicated above, and you should be good to go. But in the case that you are actually setting this up for an avatar that is not yet being optimized or intended for use with Beatsaber, just continue following along with the video. Alright, so you're going to want to open the Unity scene with your avatar, or drag the avatar that you're using into the scene above. In this case, I'll just open the Unity scene for the avatar. You'll see that we have the avatar pop up right here as this package. And in fact, to make things a bit more spicy, I've included a package with an avatar that has a bunch of extra stuff for it. So like these glasses, hoodie, and shorts. And I'm just going to enable all of these. And you'll see it's actually a bit of a mess. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that your avatar is set up exactly like you want it to look like in Beatsaber, because unlike VRChat and whatnot, where you can change the blend shapes later and you can add all these options and menus and stuff like that, in this case, you're stuck with what you get initially. So you're going to want to do some customizing. Alright, now that you've done that, you can actually click on your avatar, and you might see that there are some missing scripts. In this case, these are scripts used for VRChat, so we can actually just go ahead and remove these components. Now what you're actually going to want to do is you're going to want to head over to the armature and click on that. And you'll see that there are a bunch of missing scripts. These would have been dynamic bone scripts, and so what you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to go through and remove all of these, because that is just more convenient in this case. So what you're going to want to do next is you're going to want to actually add in dynamic bones components again. This should only have one option if you did things correctly, and this will essentially be from that dynamicbones.dll that you copied over from your Beatsaber folder. And you'll see that once you import this, you have all of these options here. Now keep in mind that because of the way that this works, you're going to have to re-input all of these values. You might want to tweak some of them later on, but I recommend having open another version of the project that actually has the dynamic bones imported and that has the correct values, so that you can easily copy these over. And of course, in order to make tweaks and whatnot, you can do that later on, and I'll show you the best way of doing that. You can copy a component and then you can paste component as new, and you'll see that it actually copies all the values. This is particularly useful because of the fact that a lot of these dynamic bones are mirrored, so you might have one for your left ear and then for your right ear and stuff like that. And since a lot of the values are going to be the same, you're actually just going to want to go down the list and copy and paste these components and just change this root transform option. And so essentially the root transform refers to the bone to which this dynamic bone is attached. These values all talk about how it moves in terms of physics, and there's some other values as well, but for the most part I recommend just moving over the values as is from the existing project and everything that is set up for you. And if you actually do know what you're doing, or you just want to fool around, feel free to do so afterwards. Anyways, now I'm actually done adding in all of the dynamic bones components. However, you might notice that there are actually some properties that I didn't copy over, and that includes any colliders. So we're actually going to go ahead and set up these ones next. So this avatar actually only has 2 colliders, which are in the wrists, and to do that, you're going to want to look for them in the armature. In this case, in order to get to the wrists, you probably want to go through the spine, chest, shoulder, arm, elbow, and wrist, and you'll actually see that there is yet another missing script. And so what you're going to want to do for all the sort of missing dynamic bones colliders that you couldn't copy over is you're going to want to find them in the hierarchy, and you're going to want to add a dynamic bone collider for all of them. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so now that you have finished setting up all of your dynamic bones, what you can actually do is you can go into play mode, and if you go back and click on the scene tab and select the base for your avatar, in this case this root object here, and you rotate it, you'll see that you can actually see the dynamic bones in action. Now what you can do is you can actually modify these dynamic bones while they're in action. So let me actually change some of the options for the ears. So let me put this all the way down, and if I now click on the avatar again and start rotating it, you'll see that that left ear or from the avatar's perspective, the left ear is a lot more jiggly than the right one. And so what you can actually do is now that you have, now that things are set up the way you want for that dynamic bone, what you can do is you can go into this dynamic bone, and you're going to want to select copy component again, because once you move out of play mode, all of those settings will be reset. And if you actually want to update those, you can just click on this 3 button thing right here and say paste component as values, and you'll see that that updates appropriately. So that way you can quickly and easily sort of customize your dynamic bones effects and make them the way that you want them to be. So next, what you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to change some of the materials. So in this case, we're actually just going to click on the body, close this blend shapes menu, and go down to the materials section. So you'll see, for example, that this mesh renderer actually has 5 different materials: body, eyes, specular, fluff, and misc. And basically all of the different mesh renderers for like the different clothing and whatnot will all have their own materials. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find a material, and you're actually going to want to do this for all materials, and you're going to want to double click it. So this avatar was actually set up to use Poyomi shaders, so you'll see that there are some errors here. So what you're actually going to want to do is you're going to want to click on the shader field here and go to Beatsaber and select a shader. Now personally, I recommend using lit glow or cell shading. You'll see that, oh no, our textures disappeared. And so that is because there is no texture selected. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to select a texture, in this case the texture for the body, and you'll see that that loads like this. Now there is actually one more thing to keep in mind here, and that is the fact that some of your materials may be transparent, as is the case for these glasses here. So let's actually go into the glasses panel and double click on specular, and you'll see that we have this specular material here, and we're going to want to actually change that up. We're going to want to go to Beatsaber, and we're going to want to go to transparent. Now you'll see that it defaults to this white, and that is because there is no texture there. And so I'm just going to select a texture that I have pre-made here, which has some transparency on it. It's a slightly darker transparent image. And so essentially you can think of it as like a PNG with some degree of transparency. That is what you're going to want to have here. And if your model doesn't come with one, you're most likely going to want to open GIMP or Photoshop or some sort of program that can make you a image with some sort of transparency in it, and you're just going to want to use that. But once you have that set up, you'll see that this looks correct. All right, and you'll notice that the in this case, now that I set all my materials to the correct shader, that it is a bit dark. So you're probably going to want to change things if it is this dark, but just be aware that in a lot of cases, Beatsaber is often a little bit brighter than it is in Unity. So keep that in mind, and you might have to go back and forth between Unity and Beatsaber to fix it up. Awesome, now that that's done, we can actually get into creating the structure for the avatar that is necessary in order for it to work properly in Beatsaber. So you're probably going to want to start by creating an empty, and you're going to want to reset the position to the origin and give it a useful name, probably in this case something like Nardragon. So then you're going to want to take your prefab of your avatar and you're going to want to plop it in here. Now there are 4 objects that you have to make, and there are some optional ones that you can add for full body tracking. The 4 ones that you should make and that you have to make are essentially just called body, which is just on its own at 0, 0, 0. And then the next one that you're going to want to make is the head, which is going to be where the head is at. So you can just do that. And in this case, I just like dragging it up to where the head is at, right? And then have it there. Cool. And then essentially now for the hands, you're probably going to want to actually go into the armature and get things situated in there. So you're going to want to go to spine and then left wrist here. So you can create an empty under left wrist, and we're going to call it left hand. And then we are going to drag that all the way down here so that it's there, and you'll see that it stays where it's supposed to be. And I can create another empty called right hand. And I can put that right here. Now, if you want to do full body tracking, just stay tuned for the next part. So for full body tracking, you actually have some additional ones that you can put in, and that is left leg, right leg, and pelvis. So what you're going to want to do is under the hips, you want to create the pelvis. So you can just call that pelvis. And you're going to want to drag that down here. And then next you're going to want to go under left leg, left knee, and left ankle. And under left ankle is where you actually want to put your left leg. And then under the, you're going to go under right leg, and under right ankle is where you want to put your right leg. And then you're done with that. There's one more thing that you should do though, and that is to create a head target. So just go and create another empty under head and call it head target. Cool, now that we have all that done, it's time to add 3 final components. So under the root Nardragon, you're going to want to add an avatar descriptor. And so the avatar descriptor will essentially, once you put it in, you'll see like these sabers, and we're going to want to do a little bit more fine tuning to make sure that the hands fit properly around the sabers. And if we go to the prefab, we're going to want to create 2 more components under here. We're going to look for VRIK manager. So you're going to want to put one of those in there, and you're going to want to add a pose manager. Cool. Those are all those components created. Let's actually get to doing something with them. So you'll see that the VRIK manager actually already has these transforms all set up. If it doesn't, you're going to have to manually go in and drag the correct bones to the correct references here. And so you can do that, and once that's all done, certain things aren't required also. So like left toes, for example, you don't need in there, but I'd suggest most of these be here. But yeah, so now you'll see that there is a head target here. So you can just take this head target, and you're going to look for that head target that you had earlier, and you can plop that in there. And then essentially we're going to want to move on to the hands and making them match correctly to the sabers. So first of all, once we get into the hands, you'll notice that depending on how you put in the empties from your armature, you may need to make some changes to the scale because these can sometimes get a bit out of control. So just make sure to set those all back to 1 if that is an issue that you are having. I don't know if that's necessarily required, but I definitely think that it is useful in a case like this, and especially since Beatsaber is quite finicky and sometimes has issues with values and stuff like that. For the left and the right hand also, you're probably going to want to change the Z rotation back to 0. This is because otherwise your hands may bend in weird ways. And in fact, if later on you notice that your hands bend in weird ways, it is probably due to the rotation of these. And so I'll go through some common issues and whatnot once we're actually in Beatsaber, so you can go back and fix them. But basically what you're going to want to do now is you're going to want to adjust the location of these sabers so it looks like your hand is gripping around them, and you also want to make sure that your hand is gripping around the end of the saber because that's sort of where the handle is. Anyways, I'm going to go do that and I'll see you once I'm done. Alright, so I went ahead and I adjusted the positioning of these sabers, so you basically just want to rotate them and put in the values. But then once that is all done, you're actually going to want to go back to your prefab here, and you're going to want to scroll down all the way to the component for Pose Manager. And so you'll see here that the hands are open, so you're going to want to click on Save Open Hands Pose. So now we're going to want to go to one of the hands in the armature. So in this case, I'm looking at the right hand, so I'll go to the right hand. And so then we're going to want to adjust sort of the rotation of these fingers so they're sort of going around the saber. So I'll do that, and then you want to expand all of these, and you want to go down here and adjust that rotation. Okay, and then you're going to want to open up all of these, and you're going to want to go down the row here, and you're going to want to adjust that rotation. So then you'll see that it is sort of matched up there, so it sort of looks like you're holding that saber. And so then you're going to want to go back to the prefab, and you're going to want to go back down to this Pose Manager component, and you're going to want to click on Mirror Right Hand Pose because the right hand is the one that we've just adjusted. And you'll see that the left hand then matches. And now that you have your closed hands pose, simply click Save Closed Hands Pose, and you are done with the hands. Now, this is a bit up to preference, but I like changing some of these settings. In particular, I think that the locomotion settings here are a bit overboard, or not really overboard, more so they aren't reactive enough to the actual movement in game. So you're going to want to actually change these to have like around half the value is what I like to do. And like I'll also decrease the step speed there. And I think this is usually pretty decent in terms of the values for this avatar. Oh, also, I quickly forgot to mention one thing, and that is that you do need this animator here in order for certain things to work. However, make sure that for controller you select none. Otherwise, you may encounter some problems. Alright, last but not least, we're actually going to want to change this avatar descriptor. You want to probably change it so it says supports automatic calibration, and you're going to want to change the name of the avatar to something that is recognizable, so I'll change it to Nardragon. And the author, you want to probably put the author of the avatar, or the person that made the avatar. And then for the cover, if you import a image or a sprite or something, you can use that as a cover so you can easily tell them apart in Beatsaber, but this isn't really necessary to include. Then what you're going to want to do is go to Window and Avatar Exporter, and a window will pop up that says essentially all the settings of the thing. And so you're just going to want to go ahead and click on Export thing, and you're going to want to navigate to your Beatsaber install folder and put it under Custom Avatars. And you're probably going to want to do this in the Exporter window so that if you have to make a lot of updates to the avatar, you can do it easily, and also Beatsaber automatically refreshes when you update the file. So this should be the best way to iterate on things. Anyways, welcome to Beatsaber. In Beatsaber, you're going to see that you have a mods menu on the left hand side, and you should at least have camera 2 and avatars as options for you to press on. We're going to start by going into the avatars menu, and you're going to want to select the avatar you just created in the right hand panel. Now that you've done that, you should see your avatar pop up as you would expect. I also already have a camera here in the in the background, but I'll get to that afterwards. So, essentially, you're going to want to set some settings, such as the arm span, which you can measure. So you would just click on measure, you'd hold out your arms like so, and after a while, it'll finish and it'll be calibrated. You'll also want to essentially, if you want to see your avatar like in first person, you're going to want to go down to the actually I think it's more like near the top. Yes, you want to show in first person, and you're probably also going to want to set this clip plane to the max value, because otherwise you can see the inside of your head. As you can see, the closer my hands come to my head, the more likely they are to disappear and sort of be off camera. That being said, if this is not what you're seeing and there are some errors, there are a couple of common ones. The most common one I'd say is probably that your avatar is just straight up white. That is probably because you forgot to set the correct shader, so make sure that the Beatsaber shader is selected in Unity. If you move and nothing happens, or it's just T-posed, then most likely you haven't set up the VRIK script, so you probably should do that. Make sure that all the bones and stuff are in there. If any of the parts that have dynamic bones that should be moving dynamically are not, then you're probably missing a dynamic bones component. And if your wrists look all weird, then go back, and I talked about the Z rotation. You might have something wrong with your Z rotation. And last but not least, if you're halfway into the ground, then chances are you have an animation controller selected that should not be selected. So just go in and make sure that that animation controller is set to none. Anyways, those are some of the common errors and some of the ones I ran into while making this one, so hopefully that helps you in case you run into any of those while making your Beatsaber custom avatar. Alright, so you're going to want to head over to the Camera 2 tab, so just press on this Camera 2 button on the left hand side, and you'll be greeted with probably just one camera, but I already have two cameras set up. So essentially you'll be greeted by this main camera, and so you're actually going to want to make some changes to the main camera in order to see yourself in the main camera as well, versus just in VR, because otherwise it won't be visible. You're probably going to want to set the Z offset to 0. The Z offset essentially says how far away the camera is from your face, pointing in that direction. So if you set it to 0, it's exactly at where your actual headset is at too, so you can just fix it by doing that. And then also you're going to want to make sure that in your visibility settings, the avatar is set to visible. Now, you're probably going to want to make another camera, so you can just click on Add Camera here. And so you'll get the second camera. In this case, I have this third person camera. So you can give it a name. I gave it third person, and you should give it the type positionable. You also want to make sure that the render scale is set to max, otherwise it'll look really blurry and weird and bad. So just make sure that you do that so it looks good. And if it's just a smaller sort of window in the corner, you could actually bump this down and whatnot to increase performance and stuff like that. But essentially you'll get a camera like this one here. As you can see, when I point at it, it turns orange, so you can press your trigger to sort of move it around. I'm just going to put it back where it is. So right there. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it for the actual, in the basics of how to use Camera 2. But in order to actually move around the cameras in your scene or so, kind of like an OBS, you're actually going to have to go back to your monitor and change those settings. So I'm going to go do that now. Alright, so now you should be able to see the cameras are layered on top of one another, and I can play a quick round. Anyways, that's all for setting up your custom avatar in Beatsaber. If you run into any issues along the way, please let me know in the comments section below and I'll try and answer any questions that you may have. Anyways, that's it. I hope you all have a nice day.